2 Chronicles 10, beginning in verse 12. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king said, "Come to me again the third day." And the king answered them harshly. And the king answered them harshly, and forsaking the counsel of the old men, King Rehoboam spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to it. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about by God, that the Lord might fulfill his word, which he spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, "What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. Each of you to your own tents, O Israel. Look now to your own house, David." So all Israel went to their tents, but Rehoboam reigned over the people of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah. Then King Rehoboam sent Hadaram, who was taskmaster over the forced labor, and the people of Israel stoned him to death with stones, and King Rehoboam quickly mounted his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Looking at this first portion about Jeroboam and all the people coming to Rehoboam on the third day. All right, how is Rehoboam forsaking the counsel of the elders? Well, clearly they had told him to be gentle with them, and he's decided to be harsh with them and to lay heavier burdens on them. Why does Jeroboam choose to follow the counsel of the young men? Well, at this point, we might be doing a bit of psychologizing him, but it does seem that they are telling him what he already wants to do. You know, this is basically him listening to himself. Remember, like we talked about last time, the elders had stood before Solomon. So when he's listening to the elders, he's listening to his father. The young men, it says, had stood before him. So when he's listening to the young men, he's pretty much just listening to himself. All right. And, you know, strength is more attractive often as a way of ruling. A lot of people think that that's how they're going to accomplish things, is just by exerting as much strength as they can. It does look like it works, but often it does not. Okay. How does it relate to the preceding context? Well, this is the final response to the dilemma that's been in the past half a chapter. You know, the 10 tribes had come to Jeroboam and asked him whether they would lighten their load compared to what Solomon had put on them, and here's his answer: he will not. All right. What is the significance of the king answering roughly? All right, so this word here in the ASV that was roughly, or in the ESV that was harshly, was the same word that was used back in verse 4. So if you look at verse 4 in the ESV, it said, "Your father made our yoke heavy, now therefore lighten the hard service of your father." So when it says hard service, it's the same word as harshly or roughly in the ASV. So they said, "Your father was harsh or rough with us, now don't be." And he answers them, how harshly, roughly, same way that they are claiming his father was to them. So this is the answer is embedded even in the adverb used to describe his speech. Okay, I included in this a couple of proverbs that are worth reading. Remember Rehoboam being the son of Solomon. Proverbs written by Solomon to his son. Rehoboam should have listened to them. But here are Proverbs 15:1 and Proverbs 25:15. Proverbs 15:1 says, "Soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This should have been obviously foolish, that you only make threats when you're in a position of power to really reign. Certainly Solomon was very strong, but seems to have gone to Rehoboam's head. He is not the larger of the tribes here. They all are much larger than he is. So it is, this was a Foolish thing to be doing. Now the other proverb, which I have lost here we go. With patience a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. This is describing how you would interact with a ruler. Jeroboam's a ruler of a lot of people. He doesn't have to listen to Rehoboam, and he doesn't. But if Rehoboam wanted to persuade him, he should have followed this proverb. With patience a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. Any questions on any of that? All right, verse 15. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of events brought about by God that Jehovah might establish his word, which he spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. All right, so in 1 Kings, it talks about this prophecy. That prophecy was that Jeroboam would go and take away the 10 tribes. More specifically, if I look it up here, 1 Kings. Okay. Never mind, that's not coming up. My internet's not working that well. But so Ahijah had given the prophecy that Jeroboam would rebel and take away those tribes. Remember, that's why Solomon had responded with trying to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam fled to Egypt, foreshadowing eventually Christ fleeing to Egypt when the ruler of Judah was after him, trying to kill all the infants. Okay, how does this event establish this word? Well, because this is the moment. This is the moment that he will rebel, and it is brought about by God, in that he ordained the means of Rehoboam's folly. You see this kind of thing pretty frequently in Scripture, where God uses sinful people to accomplish his purposes. It says in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purposes. In Genesis 50, you have Joseph saying that what you intended for evil, speaking to his brothers who had sold him off into slavery, God intended for good. In Judges 14, it uses a pretty similar phrase in Judges 14:4, where it says, but Samson's parents did not know that this was of the Lord, for the Lord wished to create an occasion against the Philistines, him marrying the Philistine woman. God brought about sinful things, though he not sinning himself, him not being the one who is causing or making anyone sin, but him certainly permitting them into sin. And not just, as our confession says, this is permission, because he's not making anyone sin, but it is not a bare permission. Okay, he is not, it's not just he takes his hands off and sees what happens. He is deciding particularly how he is going to take his hands off and direct people, by that. Pharaoh, it goes back and forth between saying Pharaoh hardened his own heart and the Lord hardened his heart. Why? Because that is God letting him go off to harden his own heart. God is not actively making Pharaoh more sinful. He is removing his hand and permitting Pharaoh to harden his own heart. That's what's happening there. Okay. There's a question that often comes up here about, well, if this is of the Lord, then does that make God the author of sin? It depends on what you mean by the word author. The way people have historically used the word author is to refer to the direct cause of something. As I already mentioned, God does not directly cause sin. He does not make anyone to sin. But yes, he is the author of all things, if you were to use the word that way. But that's not if you read older theology books, that's not what they mean by the word author. Yeah, God is the author of history, but he is not the author of sin, because he is not causing anyone to sin. He's not directly causing anyone to sin. He is the first cause of all things, but he is not the secondary cause or the immediate cause of any sinful thing. Okay, any questions about that? No? Yes?
Because in a sense, he's the first cause of the fall as well.
Right. God created all things. He created Adam with Adam's particular character, etc. He was not surprised by what happened. He knew what was going to happen when he created him. He could have created Adam differently had he wanted to, but he did not choose to. Yeah. All right. Verse 16. And when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, "What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse." All right, so what's the point of all this? The other tribes will not benefit from the wealth of David's throne. So that was the whole reason for them serving, is because they benefit by serving Judah. But if Judah is not going to grant them any benefits, there's no point in serving them. 1 Chronicles 12:19 said, Some of the men of Manasseh deserted to David when he came with the Philistines for the battle against Saul. Yet he did not help them, for the rulers of the Philistines took counsel and sent him away, saying, "At peril to our heads, he will desert to his master Saul." Or to the point there was it. Sorry, I'm still piecing that one together. The comments here stand in sharp contrast to the loyalty David had received. Right, so David had, let's see. Oh, right, the people of Manasseh leaving to go with David. Him just having a lot of loyalty. Other tribes, serving after him. But here Rehoboam is driving other tribes away. And if you remember, 1 Kings really made a big deal, or not 1 Kings, the chronicler, even in the way he's describing things compared to Kings, is really emphasizing how united everyone was under David and Solomon. And here we see things falling apart. No unity under, not the same unity under David and Solomon, tribes leaving. What does it mean to have an inheritance in Jesse? Well, like I said, to benefit from the throne. Okay. You also see similar comments in 1 and 2 Samuel from Nabal and Sheba. These are people who are opposed to David, and they talk about not having an inheritance in him. Like they don't receive any benefit from him. Nabal literally being a fool. That's what his name means. All right, 16b. Every man to your tents, Israel. Now see to your own house, David. So all Israel departed to their tents. But as for the children of Israel that dwell in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. All right, what does the phrase "to your tents" mean? Just retire from the work that they're doing, go home. See to your own houses. Just no longer bother about seeing to the house of David, rather see to your own house. And then, who are the children of Israel that dwell in the cities of Judah? These would be those who did not rebel. So if you imagine, there are these different tribes, but not all the tribes, people of those tribes are necessarily living in the places of their tribe. You might have some people from Manasseh who are living in the region of Judah and things like that. And you are going to be inclined to stick with where your home is and things like that. You're not necessarily going to just because there's a civil war going on, abandon everything you've built up in a different land. So there are some people from the other tribes of Israel that remain in Judah and do not rebel against Rehoboam. To have distinct inheritances to perpetuity. Yeah, that they, there's this land which is for Judah, this land which is for, Ephraim, etc. Yeah, those are all outlined by Moses very specifically. And then again by Joshua, but yes.
I was wondering, with the kingdom divided, does that make it harder or even impossible for them to perform the national, religious holy days like Jubilee?
Yeah, absolutely. What ends up happening? Do you know what happens with Jeroboam?
They don't observe it?
They end up making their own places of worship. They have ultimately there end up being two places of worship with two golden calves, where that's where they serve Yahweh, is going to the two golden calves. And this is why God is displeased with the nation primarily, is those, the two places of worship. And even when it speaks well of the kings of Israel, it will always say, but they did not take away the high places that Jeroboam set up. And we'll see it eventually, but Jeroboam sets them up specifically so that people will not go to Judah. He says, I know they're going to want to worship Yahweh. We've got to set up places for them to worship Yahweh here so that they don't go. Right. All right. Verse 18, then King Rehoboam sent Hadaram, who was over the men subject to task work, and the children of Israel stoned him to death with stones. And King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. Rehoboam goes and gets Hadaram in order to make good on what he said, that he would rule over this people. But clearly Israel is stronger than Judah is at this point. Why do they stone him? Because they don't want to be put to forced labor. I do have this question here. No, I didn't actually ask this. But to answer the question, is this just? I would answer yes. The Bible's pretty clear that that is a sin punishable by death in the Old Covenant is kidnapping someone for the sake of slave labor, and that's like basically exactly what's going on here. Is they're trying to force them into continued labor that they have decided they do not want to participate anymore. So I believe this is a legitimate defense, even though they are supposed to be one with the nation as far as this particular thing goes with forced labor. I think they were justified. All right. Rehoboam fleeing demonstrates his failure. It just seems really obvious that he wouldn't win this. To even go get Hadaram and try to fight this was all very foolish. They have many more people than he does. Last verse here. So Israel rebelled against the house of David to this day. To this day is an interesting phrase because this is just copying what King says, and to this day is really kind of an obsolete situation at this point, given that we're talking about post exile. Yeah. There are a number of situations like this where it uses the phrase to this day. I think my suspicion is if you go and you look at all the phrases that say to this day and you realize, well, this is kind of a weird way of saying it from the chronicler's perspective. It's even a weird way of saying it from the author of Kings' perspective. This seems to just be an idiom that they would use to mean just in general something that was long lasting or never ended up getting changed. But obviously, Israel doesn't even really exist at the point of post-exile to be rebelling. That's not even a thing that you could talk about. But yeah, of course, it never was restored. Yes.
I've heard people say that to this day can mean to the point of this writing was made.
Right, but that's what I'm pointing out is the chronicler's writing post-exile, and even First Kings is writing after that too. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it is meant to be understood in perpetuity and preparation for us having the Messiah come. That they're in rebellion to Israel since today. Is it potentially referring to that?
Certainly it sets us up for that. I don't know if that's God's intention in having this idiom be used by the chronicler, but certainly you're supposed to have the impression that okay, things were great under David and Solomon. Everything's going downhill. We need a new king sitting on the throne of David, who's going to restore David's throne to its former glory. And that is what we get in the New Testament, is Jesus who finally does that and restores unity to the kingdom rather than separating the kingdom. Just like Caiaphas prophesies, he unites many who have been scattered abroad. So this is all accomplished by the kingship of Jesus. A few other notes about how all this passage points to Jesus. Recall that this is happening on the third day. They went away for 3 days and then came together, and then the whole nation falls apart because of the decision that was made on the third day. Christ being resurrected on the third day, bringing his people together through his resurrection on the third day, doing the opposite of what Rehoboam is doing. I do believe the third day is significant here. That's not just happenstance, given how frequently you see either life or death decisions being made on the third day. The baker and the cupbearer, Isaac at the top of Mount Moriah, the Hezekiah and his salvation from sickness. Yes.
I noticed did we touch upon why does the chronicler omit this?
So the next question here is, what is the significance of Israel rebelling to this day? It's permanent. It was never fixed. What does 1 Kings add here? It adds the coronation of Jeroboam. 1 Kings adds the coronation of Jeroboam. And then what does the chronicler omit? The chronicler omits, let's see. Why does the chronicler omit? Thank you. He's primarily interested in Judah. So it's going to be frequently the case that as you're reading these side by side, you'll see large sections about Israel just dropped when when the chronicler is writing about them, because he's trying to tell you the story of Judah. He's not talking about Israel. He will bring Israel in as much as Israel is relevant to the story of Judah, but most of the passages that are about Israel in isolation, he just drops them. So he dropped the whole prophecy about Jeroboam, the whole story about Jeroboam going off into Egypt. If you remember, none of that was in here in Second Chronicles. You have to read 1 Kings to get any of that. Jeroboam just shows up so that we can have this narrative with him interacting with Rehoboam, and then once we're done with that, there's no need to focus on Jeroboam's coronation. Yes. Yeah, so you see throughout Second Chronicles and Second Kings that there were a lot of times when the Bible was not, when the Old Testament that they should have had was not being held up, and they discover it and they restore it. And I imagine that at this point in time, given we're talking right after Solomon, that they would have everything that you would expect them to have. They would have the records of, of course, Moses, of course, Judges. I mean, it's not this is right after Solomon. He knows about the covenant. Certainly he's going to tell his son, right? He would know.
It would be guilty on Israel's part too if they knew about the Davidic covenant that David's line was God's choice.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, certainly this rebellion was wrong, right? They should have continued serving because this was the king that God had anointed. Even David, having been anointed king, would not lay his hand against God's anointed. So there's that one being Saul when Benjamin ruled. So if David, having been anointed as king, did not rebel against Benjamin, then certainly the other tribes should not rebel against Judah. even if they did insist on not not being treated harshly, there were still ways of serving that weren't that they didn't. They didn't have to compromise on that, and they could have still been united with the kingdom. It doesn't really have to be either slave labor or not, or rebelling entirely. Okay, one other thought about how this relates to Christ. That statement, what portion do we have in David? So portion being an inheritance, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. They want an inheritance in him. There's no inheritance in him. What does the Bible say about Jesus? We share his inheritance. We are co-heirs with him, provided we suffer with him in order that we might also be glorified with him. This is far more excellent than Solomon's reign. Yes, they got some benefit, but we really do inherit all things in a far more literal way than that would be meant by anyone speaking of the benefits they got in David or Solomon. We will inherit all things because Christ truly is king over everything, every square inch of the earth. He will inherit all things, and we will enjoy all things, sharing with him in that. Okay. How does this passage relate to the importance of wisdom? How does it relate to the unity of the church? What implications does it have for your life? So, for the importance of wisdom and the unity of the church, certainly Rehoboam failed in listening to his father give him proverbs, telling him how he ought to interact with others. It's important to have wisdom. It's important to be well-versed in that kind of stuff so that you can be ready for it and to be listening to the right people rather than listening to fools. And then that's also important for the unity of the church. If you are wise, you can build up unity. If you are unwise, you will destroy unity. And this kingdom being representative typologically, pointing forward to the heavenly kingdom that we enjoy now in God's church, certainly we should see the importance of being united rather than being divided people. But yes.
Since the nation becomes divided, and then they later on create improper places of worship, I guess the implication is that we shouldn't create improper places of worship either.
Sure, we shouldn't. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is why a lot of people divide the church is in order to create improper places of worship, or that's what they end up doing. Yeah, so I think that's appropriate application.
Because I remember you covered in previous lessons that sometimes people will use family worship to replace corporate worship.
Yeah, that is divisive to go about family worship in a way that supplants corporate worship. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on this? Wisdom or unity of the church? Any observations?